Define the crisis. The secret to understanding how to fight the left and how to beat the left is defining the crisis. Those who define the crisis also define the resolution and seize power. That is something that the left understands quite well. It is the secret to so many of its successes. When trying to seize power, the left works backward. It invents a crisis that will allow it to gain power. And it does this over and over and over again. The bigger the crisis, the more power it can grab. Now, when arguing with the left, it is vitally important that Republicans, particularly Republican elected officials, but conservatives in general, not get bogged down and actually fight back by correctly defining the crisis. If you deal with the crisis as it's defined on the left's terms, you will fight the battle on the left's battle space, and of course you will lose. Sooner or later, you will lose. That's why it's so vitally important when confronted by the left to redirect back to the actual nature of the crisis. So when the left talks about gun violence, it's not enough to start talking about the Second Amendment. The left does not care about the Second Amendment. And frankly, if we're going to be blunt here, a sizable percentage of Americans do not care about the Second Amendment, and I am not super confident about just how many Americans could even name what the Second Amendment is or what it does. This is still a country where probably 50% cannot even name who the vice president is. So no, you don't talk about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is vitally important for us to understand. But when the left starts talking about gun violence, by which they mean guns just suddenly magically leap off the shelf and start shooting people, no, you talk about what the crisis really is. It is not a crisis of gun violence. It is a crisis of crime. It's so very simple. It's so very basic, yet I can't help but think that so few Republican officials and even so few conservatives properly do this day in and day out, because that is a big part of the secret to winning a debate with the left. You actually have to define the crisis. The left defines the crisis as gun violence because what they want to do is, first of all, yes, seize power, take your weapons away, and two, they want to distract attention from what the real crisis is, which is crime, which is a crisis that they have aided and abetted through their various pro-crime policies. And on that note, by the way, it is also vital to call them pro-crime policies, not soft on crime, pro-crime. Vitally important. And this is something that occurs across a variety of arenas. As I mentioned in the previous video, the left invented the concept of homelessness to describe mentally ill vagrants. Again, a problem that they helped create by, first of all, eliminating various measures that local communities could take to prevent that, and of course by focusing on decriminalizing drugs. And then they claim there is a homelessness problem. No, there isn't a homelessness problem. There isn't an affordable housing problem. Normal people, when they can't afford housing somewhere, like say Los Angeles or Manhattan, go someplace where it's cheaper. They do not just move in, sit in the curb, and start screaming obscenities at people passing by. It's important to define it what it is. The left calls it homelessness. Now they call it unhoused. No, the correct term is crazy people. This is the correct term for gun violence is crime. The same is true for every crisis. Every time the left postulates a crisis, every time the left invents a crisis, it is really important to define the crisis correctly. And it's so important because not only do you defeat the left's premises, when you define the crisis correctly, you are the ones who are in charge of defining what the solution is. The left seizes power by defining the solution. When it comes to poor test scores, they say it's because we're not paying teachers enough. We have a crisis of education spending. No, we do not have a crisis of education spending. We have a crisis of educational standards. Do this over and over again, and you actually win the arguments, and more importantly, you actually define and create the solution. To take back America, we actually have to be the ones who are in charge of the solutions. We actually have to define what the solution is. And so many conservatives, even populist ones, fail at this. If you don't define what the solution is, you are never going to get the chance to implement it. That is what we have to understand going forward. It's not the entire battle, but it is a vital part of the battle. And when we understand this, when we actually define the crisis, when we correctly speak the truth, then the truth prevails. Thank you for listening.